Thank you so much for recording it, Sister Nadira. So my name is Sayyid Jamaluddin, and together with my colleagues, we are hosting this international lecture as always. And before we present our lecture for today, just a brief presentation of our concept and our organization, ISIP. Most welcome. Feel free to use the Zoom chat to introduce yourself to your brothers and sisters. And it's an honor to have you all with us. Bismillah. So today's lecture will be about Islamization of psychology. What do we understand, with Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman from Malaysia. Such an honor to have you with us, Professor. And we're really looking forward to learn from you, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A little bit about today's agenda, dear brothers and sisters. Just reciting Surah Al-Fatiha start, just to get the blessings from Allah Azza wa Jal. And then we'll do some welcome and guidelines of the lecture. We will also hand out the certificate of appreciation to Professor Shukran for his amazing work in the field of Islamic psychology as one of the leading scholars in the field today. Then we will have the honor to listen to Professor Shukran, and afterwards we will have a Q&A. And finally, we will just share some feedback form and doing a closing dua, inshallah. So let's start by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, inshallah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Rahman Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, ihdina siratal mustaqim, siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim, ghayril maghdubi alayhim wala dhalin. A little bit about the Zoom etiquettes, dear brothers and sisters. So just keep your microphones muted at all time, and no recording and screenshots are allowed, please. We will upload the recording of the lectures in a couple of days in our YouTube channel, and we will share the link to ISIP's YouTube channel and the Zoom chat as well. Also, we will ask Professor Shukran for the possibility to share his PowerPoint presentation to all of you who have registered to the lecture today. So if Professor Shukran allows us, we will do that. If not, then you will at least have the recordings. If you need live transcriptions of the lecture, you can use the please press the more button. You can press the more button on your Zoom, and then you can ask for the request, and we will give that to you, inshallah. A little bit about ISIP's mission statement. We as ISIP, International Students of Islamic Psychology, try to be an inclusive space designed to connect people with diverse backgrounds interested in Islamic psychology. We aim to disseminate knowledge, share resources, and discuss best practices in a free and accessible manner. So everything we do in ISIP is free of charge. We have also local and regional chapters all over the world. So if you're interested to be part of a local chapters in Malaysia, Indonesia, or Turkey, in which countries we have, feel free to contact us. If you want to establish a local chapter in your own country, feel free to contact us as well. We also want to be a platform to enable further development of people's personal and professional interests, studies, and understanding of Islamic psychology within their communities and countries of origin. Ways to contribute to the movement: feel free to subscribe to ISIP's YouTube channel, where you can benefit from over 100 lectures in Islamic psychology in different languages. We do lectures in English, Arabic, Turkish, you name it. You can also join one of our Islamic psychology groups for resource sharing, and we will share the links to both the YouTube channel and our Islamic psychology WhatsApp group in the Zoom chat. And you can also become a member of ISIP via our website at www.isip.foundation. It's free of charge, and there you can get access to our digital library and many other things that we're doing. And as I mentioned, if you want to be part of our different task forces, we do parenting groups now, tarbiyah groups, supervision groups, support groups. Feel free to reach out to us as well. So let's now invite and introduce our professor and our lecturer for today, Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman. Professor Shukran is a professor at the Department of Psychology, Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kulliya of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, International Islamic University of Malaysia, IIUM. IIUM is very special for all of us who are students or professionals in Islamic psychology, because that's where Professor Malik Bedri worked for many years. So alhamdulillah, it's an honor to have you with us, Professor. He holds a Doctor of Occupational Psychology degree from Murdoch University, Australia, specializing in Organisational Psychology. His current research focuses includes development and change in higher education, career development, employability and graduateness of students in higher learning institutions, organization development, organizational behavior, and academic profession and culture. And this is just a brief certificate from us, dear Professor Shukran, for the excellency and all the efforts you have done in the field of Islamic psychology. We as ISIP recognizes this, and we're very honored to give this certificate of appreciation to you, and we will also email it out to you, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum for all of your great works. I also want to thank Sister Nadira, which is the project manager for our international lectures, for her excellent work. I want to thank Sister Shireen and all of our admins that are joining today for your excellent work, and all the colleagues and members in ISIP. We will not be a movement without your participation. You guys are doing an amazing job. You're excellent brothers and sisters. So thank you for attending, and please forgive us for any shortcoming. Make dua for us, and please fill out the short feedback form that we will also share in the Zoom link. So let me stop sharing now. I just want to also highlight that we will have a lecture in 2 weeks, and I'm actually going to have that lecture. It's about Futuwa, because this month is a very special month for us. You know, it's the month where the Prophet ﷺ was born. And Futuwa is also connected to Islamic chivalry, Islamic adab, Islamic akhlaq, and Islamic masculinity. So the topic that I will lecture about is Futuwa and how to develop a sound Islamic masculinity. So hopefully you can join. We will also share more information and registration link in all of our WhatsApp groups and also through email. So yes, let me stop sharing my screen, and without any further ado, the floor is yours, Professor Shukran. Welcome, and feel free to share your screen as well.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amin, amma ba'd. Thank you very much, Brother Said Jamaluddin. Thank you to all participants for joining this meeting, to everybody who are interested to learn about Islamization, inshallah. Right, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to all of you, and a very pleasant morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Right, as mentioned by Brother Said Jamaluddin just now, I'm here sharing my knowledge. I'm still a student. A student of psychology. I learned a lot from Professor Malik Badri. I'm learning. I'm still reading his work, right? So many work that he has left for us, and many more idea that he has written that I need to understand and share knowledge with my students. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, like Brother Said mentioned just now. This month is a very important month for us, because in this month we learn more about our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. I would like to share my screen so that my lecture or my discussion with all of you can be somehow guided by important points that I have prepared for tonight's discussion.
I think you can share the screen, Professor Shukran. We have given you the co-host feature.
Hang on, yeah. Okay. Let me just search for it. Can you see this?
Yeah. Yes, Professor, we can see it perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. So thank you, Brother Jamaluddin, for facilitating the session. Like I've mentioned just now, I am still a student of Islamic psychology, or psychology from Islamic perspective. So that what I would like to do tonight is just to share with you what we understand, or what I understand here with the term Islamization of psychology. As you have heard from Brother Said Jamaluddin just now as well, IIUM, or International Islamic University Malaysia, has been established about 40 years ago, and our main mission is to discuss knowledge from Islamic perspective, right? So we have 4 important agenda. One of them is Islamization. So we do Islamization of knowledge, we do integration of knowledge, and we also do a relevantization of knowledge, right? Brother Said, can you see the slide in full, or you have also other the object on the screen?
No, we see it fully, so it's perfect. Thank you so much, Professor.
All right. Now, so my objective tonight is to discuss the discipline of psychology from Islamic perspective, what we have learned from our Professor Malik Badri and other scholars in the university when it comes to the process of Islamizing psychology. And what do we mean by Islamization is something that we would like to deliberate tonight so that I can also learn from you, okay? Whatever I've mentioned tonight are based on my understanding, based on what I have learned, okay, from my other teachers, my other professors in the university as well. Right, so we are also, I think I have 4 important ideas to share with you when we talk about Islamization. So we'll see the sources of knowledge when we talk about Islamizing knowledge. What are the sources of knowledge that we deal with? Right, so how to do Islamization is in another forum, I hope, but tonight we will focus on what do we discuss or what do we understand when we say Islamization of psychology, right? So what does Islamization entail, right? What does Islamization require us to do, right? So when we go to class, yeah, our lecturers talk about Islamization of psychology. So what are the keys when we want to do Islamization? So what are the aspects to be approached when we talk about Islamization? So I have 4 notions that I want to discuss tonight. Number 1 is the sources, right? So when we talk about Islamization, okay, what are the sources of knowledge that we have to deal with? Okay, what are the sources of knowledge that help us to understand psychology from Islamic perspective? Right? The second one is the subject matters. Right? When you define psychology or when we are asked to define psychology, we always say that psychology is a study of human behavior or mental processes, or psychology is a scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. Right? So we mentioned 2 important subject matters there, human behavior and mental processes. But what else do we scope in when we want to study psychology, especially from Islamic perspective? Right, and the third one is to highlight the values that we students, we researchers, or we psychologists have to adopt or have to abide by when we study human behavior and mental processes, so on and so forth. Right? So what are the valuable practices that we can derive from our relationship or from our dealing with the subject matters or with the sources of knowledge? That is the third one. And the fourth one is what are the purposes? Why do we study human behavior? Why do we study human mental processes? Why do we study human soul? What are the purposes of those studies? Why do we want to know? Why do we want to know all those aspects about human? Right, so these are the 4 notions, okay, that we wish to focus or approach when we talk about Islamization of knowledge or psychology in this case. Okay. Now, we mentioned just now that IIUM, being an international Islamic university, we approach knowledge not only from the conventional methods, not only from the existing framework, not only by highlighting the subject matter written in the Western textbook, but we also highlight knowledge which are available in our revealed knowledge, which are available in our Quran and Sunnah. Right? So this is what we want to highlight when we talk about the epistemology or the sources of knowledge, okay, that we used to discuss or that we discuss in our psychology courses. So I would like to share with you 4 main questions that I always discuss with my students in our philosophy class, psychology or philosophy of psychology class. Right? So in dealing with knowledge, what are the sources of knowledge in question? I mean, whatever knowledge you deal with, so what are the sources of knowledge? In this case, psychology, right? So what are the sources of knowledge for the discipline of psychology? Number 2, in learning a particular knowledge, in this case psychology, what do we study? Are we only studying behavior? Are we only studying cognitive processes? What else do we study? Right? I think this question, okay, the answer to this question relates to the answer to the first question. When we want to know about human behavior, when we want to know about human mental processes, are we only adopting empirical method? Are we only doing research, okay, which we learn in research methodology class, or we have other sources of knowledge as well? If you go to Quran, if you go to Sunnah, Hadith, right? So there are many information, there are much idea about characteristics of human. There are many idea about the properties of human. There are many idea about the complexity of human, right? So by reading Quran, by understanding Hadith, for example, there are many more characteristics of human that we can understand, that we can study, right? So this is number two, okay? In learning a particular knowledge, what do we study? So we now understand that we do not only study human behaviors, we do not only study their cognitive processes or mental processes, but there are many other, knowledge, there are many other ideas about human which are available in Quran and Sunnah that we can study or that we have to study when we want to study psychology. Right? And then we want to know the truth about human, right? So the truth about human behavior, the truth about human mental processes, the truth about human feeling, the truth about human spirituality, about human soul, they are also available in the Quran and Sunnah, right? Number three, when we deal with the sources, what principles do we learn, right? So when we want to understand Quran, okay, what are the other knowledge that we have to understand? What are the ethics? What are the values that we have to subscribe? When we want to do research, for example, what are the ethics that we have to understand? What are the ethics that we have to abide by as well? Right? So these are the value aspect. Right? So when we deal with any sources of knowledge, be it empirical sources, Quran a source, Hadith a source, okay, we have certain guidelines that we have to abide by, that we have to follow, that we have to adopt. Right? Now, in addition to the values that we have to subscribe, that we have to uphold, that we have to honor, that we have to adhere to, right? So there are also valuable practices. There are valuable practices that we can derive, okay, from the sources of knowledge, from the subject matter that we learn, from the subject matter that we have derived from the sources. So the third one is on the values and also the practical value or valuable practices, okay, that we can derive from the sources, or that we learn from the subject matter that we have derived from the sources. Right, so that is the third one. And the fourth one is, which is written in number 5 actually, is on the purposes. Right? So why do we study human being? Why do we want to know their behavior? Why do we want to know their cognitive processes? Do we stop at that point? Right? So whenever we have knowledge, we have to put the knowledge for good purposes. Right? So we have to also look at the utility of knowledge. Like in psychology itself, okay, we learn about applying the principles, applying the knowledge, applying the concept in order to change people, in order to improve people, in order to develop people. And this is very much in line with what Islam teaches us. Right? So the knowledge is to be applied for the benefit of many, for the benefit of many people. Right? So this is the four notions. These are the four notions which are very important. Okay, this is what we put to our students as well when they come to our class, right? So we want them to know the sources of knowledge in the area of psychology. We want them to know the subject matter that they have to scope, that they have to deal with whenever they are studying psychology. We also want them to adhere to ethics. We want them to also see any valuable practices that they can derive from the subject matter. And the fourth one is to use those principles, to use whatever method they learn, to use the concept and whatever knowledge they have from psychology for good use in order to improve people's quality of life, in order to change people, in order to also develop people. So these are the four main questions here that we share with students in our psychology class. Right, so the summary of what I have mentioned just now can be seen in this diagram. Right, so when you try to define psychology, maybe you are going to phrase many lines like psychology is a study of human behavior and mental processes, or psychology is a scientific study of human behavior and mental processes, so on and so forth, right? But the main idea, or the generic idea, the general idea about psychology is the study of human. So we leave them very general here because we do not want psychology to be defined as only a scientific study, while the study of human can be in the form of many approaches, right? So if you look at the definition, I'm talking about what do we understand from the concept of Islamization of psychology. So if you look at this diagram try to enlighten or try to guide us on how to do Islamization when it comes to psychology discipline, right? So psychology generally can be defined as study of human. So we do not say scientific study here, right? But the word study here would encompass both, right? Approaching the subject matter by using empirical method, scientific method, objective method. And the other approach is by reading or learning from Quran and Sunnah, right? Quran and Hadith, right? So we can know about human, we can study human by doing observation. We can also understand human behavior. We can also understand human characteristic. We can also know the property of human by reading Quran, by reading Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So the first one is about the approach to know the subject, right? So when we talk about Islamization of knowledge, we also focus on this, how to source knowledge, right? So the word study here refer to the epistemological notion, the how to source the knowledge, right? So how do you source the knowledge? The first ayah in the Quran talk about Iqra, right? Read. And what do we read? There are many things to be read, right? So the word Iqra, right, in the Quran doesn't only ask us to read the ayat which are written, ayat al-maqru'ah, right? There are also ayat or signs, which are available to us in our surrounding, including human behavior. We can do observation of human behavior, right? We read ayat al-manzura, whatever can be observed, right? So the study of human encompasses these two approaches. Reading the Quran and Sunnah, there are many information about human behavior, human mental processes, human feeling, human soul, now, later, here, and also in the hereafter. Right? So there are abundance of information, knowledge, facts about human, which can be derived from that two approaches, empirical approaches is also, and also reading in the Quran and Hadith. Right? So the word study here refer to observation and also reading in the Quran and Hadith. Right? So the second one is on the subject matter. What do we study? We study human, right? What do we study? Human behavior, right? Their action, the observable actions. We can study their overt behavior. We can also study their covert behavior, right? So very much we deal with the covert behavior. What are the covert behavior? We always say mental processes, but we do not only study that. We should not only study mental processes, but we have to also study other properties or other aspects of human. Now we have their soul, we have their feeling, we have their physiological aspects, their physiological activities. I mean, the nervous system, right? The spiritual aspect of human, right? The relationship between spirituality and behavior, between emotion and behavior. So many things to be covered, to be uncovered. There are so many things to be discovered when it comes to human characteristics. So I always refer this to human characteristics, not only to human activities, but human characteristics as well, right? So where do we study? I mean, we study about human whenever they are on this earth only, right? So we study human behavior on this earth, on this world, right? But when we talk about human behavior in the Quran and Sunnah, okay, Quran and Hadith also talk about human behavior, not only in this world, but also in other worlds, right? Whenever they were in their mother's womb, okay, behaviors of human whenever they leave this world, right? So we have to take care of our behavior here, because our behavior here have implication on our fate later on in the hereafter, right? Do we study that as well? Or are we only confining our discussion? Are we only confining our study of human on this earth only? Are we very here and now only, or we are also talking about behavior of human later on when we leave this world, right? So we have to check on this aspect of soul. Inshallah, in IIUM, in our university, we are now starting new curriculum, and our new curriculum is now focusing on the aspect of human soul, right? So we are now reading the work of various Muslim scholars in the past who discuss the aspect of human soul, okay? In addition to the discussion on human behavior and mental processes. All right. So these two aspects, which philosophy subject will always refer to as epistemology and ontology, right? The sources of knowledge. How do we source knowledge, right? So what are the materials, what are the approaches that we as students of psychology, okay, can use whenever we want to scope, certain aspects of knowledge. And when we talk about Islamization of psychology, okay, we have to make sure that we do not rely only on one source, but other sources as well, especially the revealed sources. Now, this is what we have been taught. Yeah, we have been taught, okay, to not only match make, okay, the existing concept that you found in the Western literature or in the existing literature, okay, with what is mentioned in the Quran. Okay, maybe, okay, it is better for us to look at what are written, what are described about human in the Hadith and also in the Quran. Right, so that is on the aspects of approaches to source knowledge. Okay, the second one is on the subject matter. Okay, so these are the area, okay, that we can study. Okay, what do we study? That we said just now: behavior, mental processes, soul, spirituality, emotion, so on and so forth. So many aspects of human behavior to be studied. And when we scope on something like personality, for example, there are many theories, there are many ideas, there are many descriptions, okay, about personality. There are variants of one concept or one variable which are discussed in the subject matter. Right? So where do we study that? Right? Do we study only in one place? Okay, the concept of personality, for example, is it only studied in one place and then generalized to every place in the world? Right? So what about the personality of people in one culture, one place? Right? So that is to be taken care of as well. Right? So this is about the subject matter, the subject matter or the ontological notion of the psychology subject that we deal with. Right? So I talk about values just now. Okay, values. So what are the values as a psychologist or as a psychology researcher that we have to uphold, that we have to adhere to? All right, so there are many etiquette, there are many guidelines, there are many akhlaq that we have to honor whenever we deal with this knowledge. And there are also many practices that we can derive from our link or our relationship with the sources of knowledge just now, right? And the fourth one that I don't mention here is the teleological notion. Okay, the purposes of studying, the purposes of doing research, okay, the purposes of understanding human. Okay, why do we want to understand human? Okay, why do we want to know of their cognitive processes? Why do we want to know of the relationship between emotion and behavior, spirituality and behavior, and so on and so forth? Now, we want to know this because we want to help them improve. We want to help improve individuals. We want to help improve society by applying knowledge of human characteristic, by applying all principles, knowledge, concept, right, that we have studied or that we have derived from the Quran, from the empirical approaches as well. So this is also very important in Islamic perspective, because Islam stresses the importance of making knowledge useful. Khairun nas anfa'uhum linnas, that we are only beneficial, we are only good people if we can make our knowledge that we learn beneficial to other people. Right? So Islam talk about bringing good benefit to other people. Islam talk about bringing rahmah, bringing compassion to other people, bringing mercy to other people. So with the knowledge of human behavior, with the knowledge of human characteristic, with the knowledge of human cognitive processes, so on and so forth, we can bring better quality of life to them by applying whatever knowledge that we have to change, to improve, and also to develop people. All right. So there are some lines that I would like to share with you here. Like Islam provides good foundation on relationship between man and himself or herself and God. Right. So when we talk about Islam, our focus is not on individual person. Okay. Islam talk about our link with others as well. Okay. We have to look at our link with ourselves, our relationship within ourselves. But what is more important is our relationship with other people and our relationship with our Creator. Okay. And this is what we have to focus in our study of psychology as well. Yep. Islam is a way of life. Islam is a deen. Right, so we know that deen is not only deen is not translated as religion, but deen is translated as complete way of life. Right, and Al-Quran come to teach us about complete way of life. Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad SAW provide guidance on us, guidance for us, provide guideline for us, guidance for us on how to position our behavior, on how to shape our mental processes, on how to deal with our feeling, right? Things like those, right? So how are we going to relate this knowledge, these principles that we learn from Quran, from Hadith, with our subject matter of psychology? So are we going to treat them as Islamic subject, not psychology subject, or we can bring those ideas when we study human characteristic in our class of psychology as well? Yeah. So this requires integration, right? When we talk about Islamization of psychology, the knowledge, the existing knowledge that we all learn from our professors in class can be linked, can be related to knowledge that we learn from our Islamic studies class or from our reading of Quran and Hadith, right? So Islam or Quran has provided us with good fundamentals to deal with the knowledge, right? The Quran, Hadith that we read from our young days would provide us with a good foundation on how to understand human better, on how to source knowledge about human behavior, how to source knowledge about human cognitive processes better, how to understand human feelings better, because those are also mentioned in the Quran. Those are mentioned in Hadith as well, right? So by integrating subjects from Islamic studies with what we learn in our psychology subject, okay, we can do Islamization of psychology better, hopefully. Right, so these are all repetition, okay, of what I have shared with you just now. Okay, I would like to just repeat that when we talk about Islamization of knowledge or Islamization of psychology here, there are 4 important aspects at least, okay, that we have to address. Number 1 is the approaches of knowledge, right? So how do we source knowledge of psychology? We only relying on empirical method, which is not wrong actually, because Allah has mentioned in the Quran, the word iqra just now, okay, lead us to do this empirical work, lead us to do research, lead us to do observation. And when we want to do observation, we have to do the observation in objective manner, so that the idea, so that the data, so that the information that we source are objective. They are not biased. They are systematic. Right? In order to have systematic, objective, scientific way of observation, we learn research methodology. And this is what psychology has prepared us. Right? So one more thing that we have to remember, when we do this observation, we have to be honest. Okay? We have to have high level of integrity. We must not manipulate data. And this is the ethic. These are the ethic, and this ethic are also mentioned, okay, in the Quran, are also the teaching of Islam in that sense. Right? So that is about the first notion, the epistemological notion. Second is on the subject matter, on the principle, the theories, okay, in the body of knowledge. Right? So we can have rich information, we can have rich data, we can have rich knowledge about human behavior and mental processes. And our idea about human will be richer if we diversify the sources of knowledge just now, not only limiting it to the empirical sources, but also the revealed sources as well. So when we deal with the revealed sources, our idea about human will be richer. Our idea about human characteristic will be richer, will be more. We are not going to limit our knowledge of human only on their behavior in this world. We can also learn about human behavior of the past as well, other people's behavior, okay, who existed before us, and the behavior of people who are the consequences of their behavior in this world as well. Right? So this is important, okay, in order to change, to improve, okay, to develop our behavior in this world, because there are behaviors, there are fate of people, okay, who do not honor certain behavior, who do not adhere to certain guidelines, okay, on this world, okay, whenever they move to the other world. Right? The third one is on the values. Okay, we have to always subscribe, adhere to values which are taught in the Quran and Sunnah about how to deal with knowledge, how to deal with people, so on and so forth. And the fourth one is about the purposes. Okay, why do we have this knowledge? Okay, we have this knowledge not just because we want to be given certificate of psychology, not just because we are interested in the subject, okay, not only because many people are studying psychology nowadays, not only because we want to have good job later on, but we study psychology because we want to use the knowledge of psychology to help, okay, people in our society, so that they can become good people, they can be productive people, they can be good citizen of the country, they can be good servant of the Creator. Right? So this is what we want. We want to use the knowledge of psychology, okay, to make people good servant, a good Khalifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, so again, okay, the terminology is used, okay, the epistemological notion talk about the sources, the ontological notion talk about the subject matter that we can learn in psychology, okay, if you have rich sources of knowledge, right? And then the value aspect, the axiological notions, the values that we have to abide by, right? The practical aspects that we can derive okay, from the subject, okay, that can be beneficial to other people. So this is about integration that I have just mentioned just now, right? So in order to do Islamization, okay, we have to be competent, okay, in dealing with other sources of knowledge. Okay, we cannot do this Islamization alone. Okay, we need to be assisted by other people who understand Quran, who understand Hadith, so on and so forth. We have to relate the knowledge, the theory that we have, okay, with the usage, with the practices. There are many psychosocial issues which are happening in our surrounding, right? And then to make our knowledge valuable, to make our knowledge beneficial, we have to apply them or relate them to solve those issues. Okay, I mean, to me, that is an important element in Islamization as well. Right? Islamization requires us not only to know, not only to link it with Islamic revealed knowledge sources, but also to make the knowledge of good use to other people. Right? So this is the last one. Okay, you have to make sure that the knowledge is not kept to you, but the knowledge is used for good purposes, for the benefit of other people in your surrounding. Right? So, all right. So I think, brother Said, that is my first round. I can attend to questions after this.
Okay, mashallah, mashallah. Barakallah fikum. Barakallah fikum. Thank you so much for an excellent lecture, Professor Shukran. We really appreciate it very much. An important perspective in how to work with Islamization of psychology. So we will open up for our participants to ask any questions. So we can actually unmute yourselves as well today. So just raise your digital hand or write your question in the chat box, and we're happy to address your questions to Professor Shukran, inshallah. So while we are waiting, maybe I should ask you some questions, Ustad. Would you like to stop sharing your screen, perhaps, so we can have the full, we can see you in full.
I'm doing that now. All right.
Barakallah fikum, Ustad. And let me just put you, pin you. Pin. Continue. Perfect. And then also. All right. So, so would you explain to all of us your thoughts when it comes to Islamic psychology? What is the difference between using the word Islamic psychology with Islamization of psychology? If you could shed some light with regards to your thoughts and the narrative that you work with within this discussion, that would be very much something that could clarify a lot to many of us, your perspectives on it.
Yeah, I think there are two main points that you highlight just now, Brother Said. One is Islamization of psychology, another one is Islamic psychology, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
I take Islamization of psychology as a process. I mean, the word Islamization itself can require you to undergo certain processes to make the knowledge Islamic, right? So being a subject matter, okay, that subject, psychology, okay, would be modified or would be given an adjective Islamic, right? Before it can be identified as Islamic psychology, there must be certain processes that must take place, and that is Islamization. You know my point here?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Yes. So that's my take. In order to make, a subject Islamic, so that subject has to be subjected to certain processes. In this case, the process of Islamization is the case. So how to make psychology Islamic psychology? It has to be related to the process of Islamizing the subject, the subject. And what are the keys to be addressed when we are Islamizing psychology? And then as far as I understand, okay, at least you deal with that 4 aspects in the process, right? The process to approach the knowledge. Before this, the process to approach the knowledge is limited to to the use of empirical method, right? But now the process has been diversified, not only by relying on empirical method, but by also benefiting from, right, or referring to the fundamentals, which are the Quran and Sunnah, the Quran and Hadith in that sense, right? So that is the first process. The second process, which is the result of the first process, is to widen the scopes of psychology, subject matter. Before this, the concept, the variable, the construct that we students learn are limited to the findings of empirical work, right? So if in organizational psychology, it will learn job satisfaction, organizational commitment, okay, prejudice, what else? Job design, right? So these are the subject matter. But if you go to the process of Islamization, by diversifying or by enriching your sources, there are many more concepts. There are many more concepts that describe, okay, workers' behavior, or that talk about employees, that talk about relationship between worker and manager, right? The concept of itqan, the concept of ikhlas, okay? Those are area that, those are concepts that we can push out, that we can highlight as well. And that is the result of relying not only on the empirical method, but referring to the fundamentals. Right? So this, yes. So my take is it would become Islamic psychology after it has been placed under the process to make it Islamic, and that is Islamization.
So that's the process, that's the filtering process.
Yeah, so I think Islamization is a process, okay, which will lead you to what you are doing now in that sense.
So in a sense, Professor Shukran, in your take, this is the filtering process, Islamization process, to filter out the things that are not applicable to the Islamic paradigm, as you mentioned, always referring to the Quran and the Sunnah. And through the filtering process, keep the gems or keep the things that are applicable, and those become part of what we call Islamic psychology. Is this a top-down approach in a sense then, Professor Shukran?
Yeah, it can be both. Like you say filtering, I would use the word substantiating rather. Substantiating, like there are many good substances which we can start from bottom. We don't have to start from Western psychology. We don't have to start from the mainstream psychology, if you like. If you remember the word ethic, ETIC, ethic, we can use the other approach that we start from Islam itself, right? Yeah. So you know all the important notions in the subject matter. So you can start from bottom up as well, right? So it can be bottom up approach, okay, in as opposed to only on top down approach, right? We can start from what we have. From our sources, from our system, yes.
That's so great to think about, because, and I love substantiating, by the way. That's much better word, you know, because I always used filter, which also makes sense, but filter is to filter out, substantiate is to take the things that are good. So it's also, from a semantic point of view, it's a very positive way of looking at things, you know, substantiating. MashaAllah, I will use that, and I will quote it from you, inshallah. Inshallah, that's great, Professor Shukran. Thank you. So there's a lot of questions now in the chat, alhamdulillah. So let's see here. First question here is from Brother Sayyid Farzan. He's writing, Professor Shukran, but Quran can be like a tool to address abnormality in human behavior. So why do we not develop our own DSM? We can put gay behavior as disorder and develop therapy to treat it. So he's speaking about developing an Islamic psychological DSM. What is your take on that?
Oh, Islamic-based DSM? That to come up with another version of DSM?
You know, connected to the Quran and the Sunnah.
Yes, I think we can relate to what you have said just now, filtering out and substantiating. I think there are knowledge that we can benefit from other people as well, right? Although they are not Muslims, right? So in this case, I I'm not familiar with this DSM because I'm not that from that line. I only deal with DSM when I was an undergraduate last time. But information idea in DSM are not necessarily wrong or totally wrong to us, right, Brother Said?
No, I don't believe that DSM is totally wrong at all. I think that it's alluding to Professor Shukran is more like, could we add some own definitions? You know, like for instance, I mean, we believe in the ghaib, which DSM tend to not acknowledge. We have a verticality when it comes to looking at health. We believe in both the dunyawi health and the ukhrawi health. So I think he's alluding to something like that.
Yep. So I think these are set of information that we can benefit from as well. Like in the history of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I mean, the Prophet also engaged the non-Muslim to teach the Muslims. Remember during certain war, like there were non-Muslims who were engaged to teach Muslims. So what we could learn from there was that we could benefit from the people of other religion in order to improve our quality of life as well, right? Brother Said. So in this case, yes, we can come up with a better version, but not to say that whatever is being availed to us are wrong in that sense. They can be improved.
Exactly.
Right? I think filtering out and substantiating can be
that can be combined.
Our two-way moving forward in that sense.
Actually, this is our tradition, Professor Shukran. If we go back in time and we look at the traditional scholars who, develop, thoughts in ilm al-nafs, they did the same with Greek thought, right? Or they did the same with, other, like it could be Persian thought, Chinese thought. So definitely, and it's also alluding to the prophetic hadith of, wisdom is the lost property of the believer, So definitely, I do agree. Thank you so much, Professor Shukran, for answering that question. We have from MAA Van Schwabe. I'm sorry, your name, I don't know. Ma Van Schwabe. Sorry, MMA. I'm thinking about mixed martial arts. My sincere apologies. So Ma Van Schwabe says, why do we need an Islamic psychology when we have psychology?
Yeah.
That's a good question,
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need that?
I like the question. I like the question because that question came to mind as well. So especially when we translate the word psychology from ulum al-nafs, right? I think the ulum al-nafs is the translation of psychology. Like recently we had a discussion on what's the meaning of psychology in Arabic. So they translate it as science of soul. Right? Science of psychology is science of soul, and when we further translate to Arabic, it's ulum al-nafs, right? So in actual fact, ulum al-nafs is placed together as like ulum al-Quran, ulum al-hadith, right? So can we do that? Can we place ulum al-nafs together with the other two knowledge, like ulum al-Quran and ulum al-hadith? Because ulum al-nafs or science of soul are a set of knowledge, rich knowledge which are not explored. Right? So there are many ideas about soul in the Quran which are not being taught to our children, which are not being explored actually. We read the Quran, and in the Quran there are many ideas about human soul, right? So, so it was a joke that we put here. Do we have to put like ulum al-nafs al-Islamiyah when we talk about Islamic psychology, right? So the question that you put just now, why do we need Islamic psychology if we have psychology which addresses every aspect of human soul as well? Am I right, Brother Said? Yeah. So again, I think it goes to semantic as well.
It is. And actually, honestly, like I've been also thinking about it. I had discussions with many of my teachers about it, and it's kind of like I understand. I mean, look at ISIP. It's called International Students of Islamic Psychology. So I'm not being hypocritical, but this is just an academical question. Like we have accepted Islamic psychology as a word because, Professor Malik Badri used it, and, you guys are using it. But I mean, psychology is essentially, as you said, ulum al-nafs, ilm al-nafs. And we're studying, and it's kind of like when we say Islamic psychology, we're differentiating it from psychology. Like psychology is something different than Islamic psychology. But right now, that's the word that is used. So,
yeah, I think to go with the mainstream, I mean, to go with the, what we call that, the pattern of thinking, that if you say psychology, automatically we will associate with Western perspectives, right? So which do not include religious perspective in that sense. So we tend to put Islamic psychology so that it can appear to be different from the mainstream psychology.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's perhaps why we're differentiating it. But it's a very good question, honestly. And I've been thinking about it, honestly.
But by just saying psychology, it doesn't tell you that you are actually coming out with alternative perspective, right? But many of us in the department are more comfortable to say psychology from Islamic perspective rather than Islamic psychology.
Yeah. So
but if we were to follow the trend, we can use term Islamic psychology, but we will immediately define it, operationally define it, to highlight that we are discussing human characteristic from Islamic perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. It's a great question. Inshallah, we will invite for a panel discussion about this, Professor Shukran. It will be great. Barakallah fikum. So Brother Said Farzan has another question. With your permission, Brother Said Farzan, because we already asked one of yours, and we'll take some others, and then we'll come back to you if we have time. So Sister Seira, one of our excellent colleagues in ISIP from US and Pakistan, she's asking, please shed some light on how best to educate and inform non-Muslim public, scholars, colleagues, and students regarding the universal aspects of Islamic concepts of human awareness, consciousness, ethics of human behavior in personal and collective lives, without appearing like imposing Islamic perspectives based on Quran, guidelines, commands, examples, and the seerah on anyone.
Yeah, such a very important question and hard question as well. Now, I think my colleague, Professor Aziz, is here to help, I believe. We are not talking about spirituality, talk about spirituality, right? So many people are now addressing the need to include spirituality in our life, right? Yeah. So when you go to the definition of spirituality, people have started to talk about the supreme power, right? The existence of supreme power, right? The transcendence, the power which are beyond our worldly power, right? So I think many people who do not subscribe to religion, they have also realized the existence of ultimate power, superpower, right? In our case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think we have no problem to talk about this to our Muslims, sisters, but to talk to people without religion require, I think, proper approaches, right? And I think that require another forum as well, Brother Said.
No, you know, Professor Shukran, one of my teachers, Professor Dareen, he always says that Islamic psychology is a great tool for dawah. So a lot of people ask us in ISIP, is it only for Muslims? We say no. Everybody is welcome, non-Muslims. We have people that are Buddhists have joined our lectures, Christians, you know, like, and it's a great tool for dawah. And if not, it's a great tool. It is a great tool for dawah and also a great tool for education. And, you know, Dr. Fatima, your colleague, Professor Shukran, Dr. Fatima Abdullah, the wife of Professor Malik Badri, she said to me once that one of the books of Professor Malik Badri, rahimullah, I think is The Sustainers of the Soul, was translated to Norwegian by a professor in Norway, and I live in Sweden, so it's close to me, and he's not a Muslim. But they're still interested in Abu Zayd al-Balkhi's contributions, you know, and maybe, alhamdulillah, Allah will open up doors so they come to the deen of fitra as well, you know. So I definitely agree that we need to find ways. And I guess also sometimes we would just speak, like for instance, I love akhlaq, you know, tahdib al-akhlaq and refinement of character. And when I speak about this with non-Muslims, they love it. They love it, like personality development, balancing your, you know, character traits, you know, moderating your ways, you know. So it's universal knowledge, actually, you know, and a lot of them gravitate to Islam and they want to know more. They want to know more about spirituality. It's a great way of introducing people.
And just to share with you that we also have colleagues who are non-Muslims, friends who are non-Muslim, and they read our scholars' work, Professor Malik Badri's work, especially. Right. I mean, I think the books are not what we call that imposing, are not preaching people, right? To make them Muslim, but to tell what Islam has to offer, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So I think that should be the way as well, by telling our readers, our audience, of what Islam has to offer. That would make them come closer to Islam and benefit from it, inshallah, one day. Yeah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for IIUM. Honestly, Dr. Professor Shukran, you have spread so many scholars all over the world, that are doing this great, introduction of Islamic psychology and psychology from Islamic perspective. Thank you, Professor Shukran. All right, we go to Sister Aifa. MashaAllah, Sister Aifa, nice to speak to you. Salam, Professor Shukran. Why Islamic psychology is said as a subset of the psychology of Islam? Would you please explain how they are different?
I think we have said it just now, Brother Said, that why do we need the Islamic psychology? While psychology itself is very Islamic, or it's all about what Islam has informed us, right? So if you remember this ayah, like this hadith, when the Prophet said that innama bu'istu liutammima makarimal akhlaq, right? I mean, the whole idea of Islam coming to us is to perfect human existence, right? So Islam is sent to us because Islam want to guide our behavior and all our characteristics, right? Okay. So I do not see that Islamic psychology is a subset, because I think it's a discipline in itself.
It is.
Yes.
I totally agree. And actually, is psychology from Islamic perspective, Islamic psychology, it's an interdisciplinary field. Like, I think that it's important for us to understand it's not something uniplex. It's very multiplex in the sense that it took from tib, from kalam, from tasawwuf, from akhlaq, from fiqh, from falsafa, and from many other disciplines in Islamic thought. Yes. So the scholars were all studying Islamic psychology, or the science of the soul, the structure of the soul, the ontology of the soul, from different disciplines. And that's very important, because we tend to sometimes think that psychology is just one field, and it's not. That's the minimalistic and very behavioristic, mechanistic way of West approaching this psychology from one approach. It's behavior today, or it's cognition today. Well, we actually were looking at it from character development, as you mentioned, or, from reaching to God, which is, spirituality and tasawwuf and all these things. So this multiplexity makes it very unique, actually, as a field in a sense, and also very enjoyable.
I think that's a very important line, Brother Said. Yeah, I now realize that we have 10 departments in our faculty, and all those departments are talking about human soul. Yeah. Right. So, none of them are talking about engine. Even if they are about engine, that engine has many things to do with human as well. Exactly. Right? So there is one institute about behavioral science, like in one country, and who are there in the Institute of Behavioral Science. I mean, they are not only psychologists or sociologists, but they are engineers, they are doctors, because all of them are talking about behaviors of human.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah, thank you so much. It's great questions. I really appreciate it. So we have from Sister Nadia, how can we integrate Quran Sunnah in a predominantly westernized therapy room? And I think that Professor Shukri already answered this when it comes to the Islamization process, but would you like to say something more about the question?
Yeah, I think when we're going to do Islamization, sometimes we feel that we have to include the verse, right, of the Quran, or text of the Hadith, right? Yes, I mean, if we are dealing with people in our community, that might be okay. But when we deal with people who do not know Islam yet, or who are sensitive to Islam, maybe it's sufficient to refer to tafsir, or refer to the Mufassirin work. We can cite them. There are many Mufassirin work which we can cite in our writing as well. Yeah. Right, Brother Said? Yep.
Yeah.
So that they are not, because some people are allergic to Islam. They are allergic to Quran, Sunnah, to Hadith, right? So to deal with people of this kind, okay, I think we can use subtle approach, okay, by substantiating with the gist that we have from Quran and Hadith.
MashaAllah. Barakallah fikum. And you know, it's kind of like, so I'm trained in traditionally Islamically integrated psychotherapy. And in that model, it is both substantiating, as Professor Shukran you allude to, and also indigenous at the same time, rooted in our tradition and our Quran and Sunnah, primary sources and secondary sources. And to combine this is to be traditional, because that's how the traditional scholars were working as well. So it's kind of like, what is traditional? It's to root itself in primary sources, of course. This is the primary for all Islamic thought, Quran and Sunnah, and then to be curious. And this is also, Professor Shukran, one thing we have forgotten in the modern day and in this time of confusion and the decolonial era, in a sense, or sorry, the post-colonial era, I should say, is curiosity. Because we're always under attack today, because we're attacked through liberalism, humanism, secularism, all these isms that are non-fitri. And then I always say the person that is attacked could also create a pathological way of looking at his or her own identity. Either you preserve something you think is what you're preserving, which is to reject everything else. And that's actually a reactive way of doing it, which is not according to our tradition. Yeah. That's the action. I need to keep my identity. I'm refraining from everything else. This is the truth. This is the haqq. Or you just become I call it Carlton from Fresh Prince. If people watch like American series from the 90s, like you become this person who absorbs everything without questioning it, without being rooted in your own paradigm, which is kind of like assimilation without understanding your own paradigm. You just become like the opposite idea, losing yourself, which is not good either. So this is extreme from two spectrums. But if we are truly rooted in our paradigm, which our traditional scholar were, then you can show curiosity without losing yourself, because you always have that lifeline, which is the Quran and Sunnah, which is what you know, which is your whole life perspective. And then you can easily be curious and not reactive. I do understand why we become reactive, Professor Shukran, because we live in a very turbulent era. We're not rooted. We don't have any fitri societies. I mean, Malaysia is the closest we can come. Like come to Sweden, it's not fitri. You understand what I'm saying? And then you're always reactive. So I think we need to bring that into mind, that curiosity is very important for us who are interested in the science of the soul. Please forgive me for, speaking too much, but that was just something to add.
For the idea. Yes.
Yeah. Barakallahu feekum. So let's go to next question. So Farouk is asking, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Since our soul has seen Allah Ta'ala, and Allah Ta'ala has communicated with us when we all agree that Allah Ta'ala is our Almighty Allah, our soul needs to be nourished by the remembrance of Allah Ta'ala to keep in touch with Allah Ta'ala. If this is not done, then uneasiness prevails in the form of anxiety and depression. Would you agree with this? Also, to gain from this connection to Allah Ta'ala and gain the calmness and confidence required to have a better quality of life, one has to believe without any reservations that what is revealed in the Quran is the absolute truth. These cannot be determined by any scientific study or behavior. What is your feeling about this? Shouldn't we be concentrating on nurturing our souls to help people with anxiety and depression? MashaAllah.
Yeah. The gist of the question is?
So the question is, there are several questions. First and foremost, is it, if you're not connected to Allah Ta'ala, and then depression, anxiety will come, right? And then he is also asking what is your feeling about things that are not related to the Quran and Sunnah? So I'll ask the second part of the question again. Also, to gain from this connection to Allah and gain the calmness and confidence required to have a better quality of life, one has to believe without any reservation that what is revealed in the Quran is the absolute truth. These cannot be determined by any scientific study or behavior. Would you agree on this, Professor?
So he's asking whether we need to strengthen someone's spiritual life in order for him to have well-being life.
Yeah, he has multiple questions here. So the first question would be like, we should 100% believe in the Quran and it doesn't need to have any scientific, empirical study. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I mean, of course, we have to have a total belief in the Quran, and in the Quran, there are many verses that describe about the property, but the position of soul. And in the Quran also, Allah tell us about the importance of having good relationship with or among people, so that people are reminded of their relationship with God. Right. So yes, we have made this pledge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we'll take him as our Lord. But as being human, we tend to forget. Tend to forget of these important facts, right? We tend to be carried away with many life matters, right? So much so that we know that Allah is our protector. Allah is with us all the times. But how to best do that? We need also guidance, right? In Surah Al-Asr, Allah asks us to always help each other. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Right? It is always important for us to remind each other, right? Remind our friends, remind our family members. In our case, remind our client or help our client, okay, to know the truth. And the other one is to live with patience. And patience here involves so many things. If we go to the tafsir of patience, here we have to be patient with challenges in life. We have to be patient with tribulation. You have to be patient to make yourself remain positive with life. I mean, remain steadfast with Allah order and things like those. Yes, we believe in this. We believe that everything is fated, something like that. But we also believe that we have to help each other. We have to remind each other. We have to help each other. We have to help our friends to remain steadfast, to remain positive, and to always remind that Allah is there. And this act of reminding is not only by saying, but it involves some techniques. Right? And then we learn that in our counseling, we learn that in our psychotherapeutic technique and things like that. That is because we want to do that reminder in the best possible manner. Right?
Barakallahu. Totally agree. Thank you so much, Professor Shukran, for a thorough answer. Sister Somaya is asking, can you give an example of how we can manage any disorder, say, for example, autism, through or by the help of the Quran?
Yeah. So I think I have to do justice here. I'm not coming from that field, but one thing I can say here is that Quran asks us to read, and I think in order to do that reading, in order to operationalize that reading, we have to do observation, right? Yeah, we have to do observation, and that necessitates what we now do research or scientific research in order to understand, I mean, this phenomenon or this phenomenon in that sense.
Yeah. Actually, autism is also complex. I mean, there is a spectrum when it comes to diagnosis. I mean, autism, ADHD, bipolarity, borderline character, all these are very close linked to each other. And, sometimes we don't know exactly where people are, and people can also change and, come into, it's very complex, these modern diagnoses in a sense. Also the root cause, sometimes it's trauma related, sometimes it's biological. It depends, so it's diagnoses are good sometimes just for us to understand as clinicians, but to define them as static, it's not good, because it's not static, it's quite complex. And one thing that we need to also speak about is that historically, a lot of those who have ADHD were geniuses. Like, I'm sure that ADHD in a society which allows people to be different according to Allah's will is actually a gift in many ways. Because, like, at least those I know that have ADHD, yes, there is some shortcomings, like we all have shortcomings, maybe difficulties in remembering things, but when they focus on things, they're like the best. They're so knowledgeable, and they're so like beyond what perhaps my capacity is. So we used to see them as talented people, and we never diagnosed them or we never stigmatized them. And ADHD is and could be a gift, but the society is not accepting it because the society wants you to be in a certain way. While if you look historically, a lot of those that we stigmatize today as having different mental disorder, we used to see them as people that were connected to Allah in a better way than us, that could be connected to the ghaib, to the metaphysical realities beyond our, beyond what we can perceive with our, senses. So we need to redefine our views of looking at diagnosis as something static. I'm not saying we should not have them. Sometimes they're needed to help people, to support people, to give them proper help. But I mean, honestly, if you can write 600 books in 20 years, which many of our traditional scholars did, then you must be a genius. And maybe you had, some things that today will be diagnosed as a pathology, which is a blessing, actually. So I just wanted to add that to the discussion because sometimes we tend to pathologize some diagnosis. Allahu Alam. Barakallahu fikum. So Sister Saida is writing, why does psychology not contain Islamic sources? Why is there a separation between psychology and Islamic psychology in order to obtain Islamic source and knowledge? As someone who studies psychology in an Islamic country, what we study doesn't mention any Islamic sources. Yeah, that's a good question. Why doesn't it mention any Islamic sources when we study psychology, General Professor Shukran?
Yeah,
Why?
I think first to avail the Islamic sources, right? So that people like us now are working on not only using the existing literature, but to come up with literature, okay, that are based on Islamic sources, right? So we complain that our students do not refer to Islamic sources, but do we have we published enough of public sources?
Yeah.
Right, I think our responsibility as academics in the area of Islamic psychology is to also publish so that we provide alternative reference or reference which are needed by our psychology students. I mean, be they are Muslims or non-Muslims, right?
True. That's so important. We need to produce. And that's something we need to do.
And our task is not only to teach, it's not only to talk, but to avail, good Islamic resources as well.
Thank you so much for that nasiha, Professor Shukran. We will take that upon, inshallah. So we have 6 minutes left. So we have one more question here, and maybe then we can go back to the question from Brother Said Farzan. So Sister Nur Husna, one of our ISIP Malaysia members and leaders, she's asking, Assalamu alaikum, Professor and excellent brothers and sisters, how will artificial intelligence affect our lives in the future in terms to change human psychology to approach human behavior traits, especially the soul? That's a good question. I don't know if it's the scope of this lecture, but it's a good question though.
Yeah. Yes, we have a team here in our university which look at the future. Right, we look at I think 11 aspects of human behavior and characteristic in the year 2070. We have future studies as well, right? So we have factored in science and technology. Of course, we have to make sure that whatever invention that we make, okay, they must position human fitra, okay, human basic needs, human characteristics as fundamentals, right? So they are to make sure that human can still have good relationship with themselves, okay, with other people, with the environment. Okay? Environment here means object that they have in their surrounding. Okay, they can have also good relationship with their future, and they have to realize, or they have to have good relationship with God, right, the Creator. Right, so whatever new invention, artificial intelligence, whatever it is, it must not jeopardize our life, our harmonious life with ourselves. So artificial intelligence must not do harm to ourselves. Artificial intelligence must not do harm to other people. And artificial intelligence must not lead us to refuting or negating the existence of God. I think that is one fundamental that I wish to encourage us to remember.
That's what you're saying, Professor Shukran, which is also a philosophical question. It's not artificial in the sense that Allah has created it. So in a sense, the whole notion of artificial is perhaps, I mean, it's not organic, perhaps we could say, but it's created from Allah, so it's not artificial. Allah Alam, I've just thought about it now. Like sometimes we use terminologies that is rooted in a secular world. It's not rooted in a Tawhidi worldview, right? So maybe we should not call it artificial. Maybe we should call it something else. Allah Alam. Just the food for thought. Food for thought. You know what, Professor Shukran, that will be the last question. We really appreciate all of your time. May Allah bless you. May Allah bless your deeds, your good work, your excellent scholarship, your excellent teachings. May Allah bless all of our teachers at the IIUM, all of our scholars at IIUM, and all the students at IIUM. We're so honored to be. Actually, we want to also tell all of our members here that we're doing a partnership soon strategic partnership between IIUM and ISIP. We're very honored for that, and we're really looking forward, because we as ISIP consider IIUM to be, if not the leading Islamic university for Islamic thought in the world. And we're very honored to be here with Professor Shukran. Please come and feature us more time, Professor Shukran. You're always welcome to do lectures for us. We would love to learn from you. You have so much knowledge. Thank you so much. May Allah grant you tawfiq. I also want to thank all of our brothers and sisters today for joining. As always, your questions are excellent. Your participation is very beneficial. We learned so much from you. And I want to thank my colleague, Sister Nadia, Task Force Facilitator and Project Manager for ISIP's International Lectures work. I also want to thank Sister Ismat, as always, for her excellent work, and for all of my colleagues. You're all doing an amazing job. So without any further ado, we will, all of you who have registered to the lecture today, Professor Shukran, are we allowed to share your PowerPoint presentation with them?
Yeah, I will pass you the PowerPoint slides for the site.
You email them or send them to me. We will send them out to you. So please register yourself. Sister Nadira, could you just share the registration link to the lecture for those who haven't registered yet? So if you want to have access to Professor Shukran's PowerPoint slide, please register yourself, and we will email that out next week. And in a couple of days, we will also upload the lecture into ISIP's YouTube channel, and Sister Nadira just shared the YouTube channel link. Please subscribe and press the thumbs up so that more people can benefit from the sacred knowledge of psychology from an Islamic perspective. Also, we have our WhatsApp groups. Feel free to join them for discussions and resource sharing. Would you like to say anything, Professor Shukran, before we end?
Thank you very much. I mean, good job, ISIP. We look forward to linking our students to your activity so that you can help us, okay, again, I'm using the word substantiating our students who want to learn psychology, especially from Islamic perspective. It is not only me alone who are doing this in IIUM. There are 20 more academics who are very serious in Islamization agenda, okay, on this discipline of psychology. Maybe one day we can benefit from their expertise as well. Inshallah, with the signing of MOU later on, okay, we can have better link or closer ties with ISIP, right? So for the benefit of many, right, who are helping people to have better behavior, better thinking, okay, better feeling, and better servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah.
I mean, thank you so much. It's such an honor to do the MOU. I'm really looking forward to it. And Malaysia is also such an important country. So thank you so much, Professor Shukran. Would you like to close up with any du'as, please, if you can lead us in a collective dua, inshallah?
Please, Brother Said, you are better than me.
Oh, no, Professor Shukran, please, please. You're the Ustad, please.
All right. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي جلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. اللهم إنك تعلم أن هذه القلوب قد اجتمعت على محبتك واتقت على طاعتك وتوحدت على دعوتك وتعاهدت على نصرة شريعتك فوثق اللهم رابطتها وأدم ودها واهدها سبلها وأملها بنورك الذي لا يخبو واشرح صدورها بفيض الإيمان بك وجميل التوكل عليك وأحيها بمعرفتك وأمتها على الشهادة في سبيلك إنك نعم المولى ونعم النصير. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإني من المسلمين. دعواهم فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحيتهم فيها سلام وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Barakallah fikum, Professor, for the beautiful dua. May Allah bless you and your colleagues. Extend our greetings to your family. We'll speak